Hey guys, and welcome back to Thelearningdroid. Today we're going to be looking at a review of the Peter Child's wire tip pyrography machine, variable temperature machine. We're going to look at all the different bits and pieces that you get with it. Some of the bits and pieces you can buy as extras, which is going to be great fun. We're going to look at the different kinds of wires. We're going to talk about making tips and talk about cost and size and comfort of use and things like this. And what I'm going to do is, just like with my previous review, I'm going to zoom in. The reason I'm going to do that is I could hold things up here and I could point at them and talk about them, and that would be all well and good, but I would prefer to get in nice and close with the camera and give you a really close in view of what I'm doing. Give you a view of literally exactly what I'm doing and exactly what the different things are, so that rather than having a look at that, I want you to be close enough to see the individual details. Which just makes it not better, but just gives you a better idea of what you're looking at. So guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the camera in and we'll have a look at the machine. Hey guys, welcome back. So as I did with my previous reviews, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about different elements of the machine and different positives and negatives. And I'm also going to give you some raw facts, some raw base facts as well, about the machine and different sizes and things. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about my opinions on the differences between this machine and other machines. I'm not going to give it a score. I'm not going to say 5 out of 10 or 6 out of 10. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the machine and how it compares to other things. And then right at the end, I'm just going to give you a breakdown of the review. Maybe 10 or 12 sentences that just give you a boom, 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 boom right at the end. So let's start off with the physical side of the base unit. This is the thing that makes variable temperature machines variable. It's essentially just a big variable converter, big variable transformer for the current, and it just controls the amount of current that goes through your pen. With wire tip machines, what happens is the electricity flows down the cables, down the pen, through these tines and directly into this tip. And it's just heated up via resistance in the wire. As the wire has electricity pass through it, it resists a certain amount of that electricity. That energy gets turned to heat energy, heats up the wire. Which means that you do have a live current travelling through the wire when it's turned on. However, most of these are very, very low current. I believe travelling through here is 2.5 volt. It says on the back of the base unit, it's a 2.5 volt output. So if you think about that, that's about the same as 2 AA batteries, and it's approximately half one of the little block batteries. It's actually just under half of a 6 volt little block battery, which a lot of people lick for some odd reason, so it's obviously not dangerous. So let's talk about the base unit, the variable temperature unit. Size-wise, it's quite blocky. A lot of other units are narrow and tall, a bit like a book standing up on its end, or flat and thin but quite wide, a little bit like a little desk drawer or a book lying flat on its side. This one is quite boxy, a little bit like a brick, which is not to say that's a bad thing, it's just a difference in size. In this case, this is 3 inches tall by 4 inches wide by 7 inches long, or if you'd prefer that in metric, it's 7.3 tall by 9.8 wide by 18 long. So we've got a little, and that's on the longest of each of the dimensions. So we've got a little bit of a brick, but that's fine. It's actually a very convenient little brick and it's quite weighty. The handle on top and the little fixing or little support for a pen on top add another approximate inch to the top, just a little bit more than an inch, which brings the full height up to about 10 centimeters. So from bottom to top is about 10 centimeters if you include the handle. Now, this little clip here is the Peter Child's version of a mount for your pen, so it's a place you can put your pen. It comes very, very tight and you have to flex it out and stretch it out yourself to fit the pen. I would prefer it if it came pre-stretched, but I can understand why they don't pre-stretch it, because if it's stretched too far, it's actually harder to make it narrower than it is to make it wider. That's just screwed straight onto the top. The other thing that is quite unique about the Peter Child's machine in many ways is this handle. The flat, short bricks and the or flat short ones, and the tall thin ones, pardon me, don't have this handle on top. And this handle, at first when I looked at it I thought, why on earth they put a handle? I've never seen a base unit with a handle before. But I've carried a couple of base units about, and actually I found that with the Peter Childs machine, this handle is ridiculously convenient. Not only does it mean you can slot it into a box that pretty much, or into a space in a toolbox that pretty much exactly fits it, and you don't have to worry about getting your fingers around the sides of it to lift it up. It's got this handle on top that you can just lift it up straight with. It's actually very convenient if you've got a limited workspace, or if you've got a workspace that you have to pack away afterwards, because you don't have to worry about dropping it. It's got a nice convenient handle. It's actually a really good convenience thing. The only thing I would say about the handle is that it should probably be about 1.5 centimeters, maybe half an inch backwards, because the majority of the weight is at the back of the machine. So if you pick it up, you have to have your fingers at the back of the handle to keep it level. If you move your fingers to the front of the handle, it tilts back, just because there's more weight at the back of the machine. So if anything, I'd say the handle could do with being a bit further back. Still on the physical side of the base unit, the cable. Now, this is the English version, because I'm in England. I do not know about the cable for the American version. The box unit looks identical, except it's got a different connector at the front, different pair of connectors for the pen, because it's got a different connector on the end of the pen lead. But for the English version, this is 178 centimeters or 70 inches of plug lead. That may vary, I'm not sure, but that's a good length of plug lead. That's over 1.5 meters of plug lead, which means you can have a distance between your work unit and where you're plugging it in, or of course you can use an extension cable to get much more distance. So, onto the actual physical side of it. Got the on-off, or onto the actual using side of the base unit. You've got the on-off switch here, nice loud click, nice stiff unit, nice stiff switch, and it lights up when it's turned on. This is great, because it means if you pull the pen out, or if you've unplugged it and then plugged it back in, you can tell whether it's on or not. So you can tell whether these points are live, and you can tell whether the tip of your machine is going to get hot straight away or not. And with wire tip machines, that is something, guys, because this is current running through the tip here, it will get hot within seconds if this is turned up and this is turned on. Plug it in and this will get hot within 4 seconds, maybe a little bit less than that. You've got 2 bullet connectors down here, which is where you plug your pen in, and then you've got your variable temperature knob. The number at the top is the number that it's set to. I would love to see them include a little arrow here, or just a little stick-on metal strip like you get on the front of a watch, just to mark the top here. I'd love them to include that. They haven't in this one, which is a mild disappointment. It's not actually a big deal, but it would be nice just to have a tiny little marker just to show you where the top is. As to the knob itself, it's got a nice little click, or not quite click, it's got a nice little rasp to it, which gives you some good physical feedback. I am very much the kind of person who hates a floaty control. I don't like a control there where when you turn it, you don't know whether you've turned it or not because it's so floaty. This one, because it's got that nice, very gentle little feel to it, very slight little, almost like judder, but not quite. It's a very pleasant little feel. As it says, it goes from 0 to 10, or actually just a little bit past 10 as well, and it gives you a good vary of temperature. At 0, you're looking at being able to burn birch plywood with a 0.5 mil, or with a 1/32 or 1/64 width face, and all the way up at 10 you're going to be looking at having your tips glowing bright orange turning towards yellow. So it gives you a nice big vary of temperature. As with the most machines, it's got all of its important details printed on the back, including the company that made it, the input and output voltages, and use a 3 amp or 1 amp fuse. It's got all the details you want. It's got temperature vents, or it's got air vents on the side. The only issue I have with these is that if you're doing sanding or anything near it, to protect the machine you should really cover these up. So if you're going to be doing a lot of sanding, either put the machine away in a box or cover it up with a cloth so that lots of dust doesn't get inside the machine. So that's our base unit. It's very nicely made. It's got a nice two-colour system. It's made of metal on all sides, and it's got a nice long lead, nice decent shape, good handle, good feeling controls on the front. It's a very nice machine, very nice base unit in general. The only thing I would say is that the photographs on the Peter Child's website, which is where I bought this one, don't actually do it justice. From the looks of the photograph, it actually looks like it's made to a cheaper quality than it actually is. The photographs on the website, I would say, are not as nice as this machine is. So that's the base unit, and we can move on towards the pen. 2 bullet connectors and a split section of cable, which is approximately 4 inches long, or sorry, 3 inches long. And then you've got length of cable. We've got about 107 centimeters or 42 inches. So you've got a meter of cable here, and it's quite relaxed loose cable. I mean, you'll never get really soft cable, but it's got lots of nice motion in it, and it's not too stiff. Onto the pen. The pen handle itself is 5 inches long, including the tines, which makes this about 4 inches long. You've got about 4 inches of actual handle, and you've got an inch of flex protect at the back and approximately an inch of tine, approximately an inch of these connectors here. The pen itself, the diameter wise, is 5/8 of an inch, which is very comfortable. It's a little bit wider than a writing pen. I'd say it's a tiny bit wider than like a felt tip style pen, but it's a nice comfortable pen to hold. It gives you plenty of width to grip, but isn't so wide that it's going to start hurting your hands after long use. Because the cable's quite flexible, you can rotate it quite freely when you're using it. It's made of a plastic tubing, and it's not foam rubbered or soft, but I haven't had any experience of it getting hot. I've used it for going on 2.5 hours at a time in one sitting, or 2.5 hours in one sitting, and it's not gotten hot, which is very good even with the wire point machines that don't tend to get hot. The tines are a big element of that, because the tines give you a nice distance between the hot points and the handle you're holding it by. The only thing I would say is, because this is a single continuous plastic tube, when you're focusing on what you're doing, I have a tendency of creeping my hand down. And what I'll do is I'll start with my hand up here, and I'll be doing some pyrography, and I'll start creeping my hand down to try and get more and more control. And the first thing I'll know about it is my fingers coming over the edge here towards the tine. I would love to get a little bit of, I don't know, banding here, or perhaps a little grip strip or something right around the tip here, just to give you a little warning when your hands are getting close. But that's just me being stupid. Now, when it comes to the wire tip and how it's attached, you've got a folded nut and a flathead screw. And if I show you this, all you do is undo the flathead screws on either side, just to relax the tension, or just to relax the grip, and you pull out the wire tip. Now, under these, it's the actual connectors. I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll take this all the way out and I'll show you a little bit more. So there's our folded bolt and our screw, and there's our connector on the end, which is where our wire connects to the electrical current of the machine. Which is very good quality, very nice, very simple. I like the way it's done. And then of course you have the problem of putting it back on. It's not actually too difficult, I'm just a little bit clumsy with my hands. I have an issue where I'm not particularly accurate with what I do with my hands, which is of course why I love doing things like this. It's much easier if I have a pair of pliers. So basically guys, we have these bent bolts here, bent nuts, and a little set of, I suppose they're bolts more than screws, but little flat bottomed screws, and they act as our binding points for our wire tips. Now this machine is, as with all machines, they have sort of recommended things. For this machine it's recommended you use nickel chrome wire, which is fine. Nickel chrome wire is fine, it's not particularly expensive, it's not hard to get hold of. Nichrome wire. And this machine, if we look at standard wire gauges, it's supposed to be able to use anything from about 27, which is the thinnest, all the way up to about 22, which would be the thickest. So we were looking at say 0.68 millimeters diameter down to about 0.4 millimeters diameter for the different widths of wire that it can use. It's a nice comfortable little machine. It doesn't get hot, it's quite a comfortable pen. You've got enough cable. So that's a nice look at the, I suppose, the physical side of it. The other thing we have to talk about, of course, is cost. So for the cost-wise, you can actually get this machine from several different websites, but having had a look around, the very best deal you can get is from Peter Child's website. And just a quick confirmation, I bought this myself, I wasn't given it as a free sample, I'm not being paid to endorse it or anything like that. I'm just doing a review because some people asked me to do a review of my new machine. And I bought it from the Peter Child's website because that's the cheapest I could find. If anyone else can find a cheaper site that does the Peter Child's machine, feel free to post it in the comments. On the Peter Child's website there's a couple of different packs, and the main pack is the starter pack. And the starter pack comes either in a UK version, which gives you this, which is the UK plugged, UK voltage Peter Child's machine with the bullet point connectors, or the US version, which has a US plug, it's arranged for US voltage, and instead of having the two bullet points, it's got a single 6.5mm mix jack. Now the starter kit comes with the base unit, one pen, 5 fine wire tips, which are these sort of wire tips. So I shall pop one of those out. So you're looking at having 5 of those, and 1 spoon tip. And as well as all of that, as well as the pen, the 5 wire fine tips, the spoon tip, the base unit, you also get a small coil of 26 gauge wire. And to be fair, I've used this coil to make points. I've made maybe 10 points out of this coil, which is a lot of points really. 10 points will last you quite a while. I mean the 5 they send with the machine will last you quite a while. But I've made 10 points, everything varying from chisel tip to fine detail point to folded points using this wire. I've made 10 points in total using this wire, and I've used maybe a tenth. So you could get maybe 100 points out of this, and this is the wire that comes with the starter kit. 100 points is a ridiculous amount of points, and that's just with this that comes with the starter kit if you want to make your own tips. So the starter kit is going to set you back about £100 or 110 if you get the US one. Now you can of course buy all sorts of little bits and pieces as well. You can buy extra pens, which will be £30 roughly, whether you get the English version or the American version. The American version is fractionally more expensive, but we're looking at like 60-70 pence. And then of course you can buy all the assorted bits and pieces that go with the machines. So you can buy spare tips at between £6 and £4, or £6 and £3 depending on the kind of tip. You can buy coil tips, which I've shown you how to make in a previous video. You can buy spoon tips. Spoon tips are one of the ones that you are most likely to want to buy because they're very hard to make at home. I mean, with this wire you can make as many fine detail points as you want, even though they only cost £3 for 10 or £3 for 5. I can't remember if it's 10 or 5. I think it's £3 for 10. You can make 100 of them approximately with this bit of wire that comes with the kit. So, and they're very easy to make. I've done a video on how to make them, so you don't really have to worry about that. But the spoon tips are hard to make, and you can get 10 of those for £6, so it's actually kind of worth it. You can also get, and I did buy a set of these to show you how they arrive, you can get spare contact screws and spare contact bolts. One pack of spare screws and bolts comes with 2 bolts and 2 screws, so a complete replacement for the contact bolts and screws on a pen. So a complete replacement for a pen's bolts and screws. Set you back about £4 roughly. I think it's £3.90. And then you can also buy this, which is a coupler. It's actually just a plastic tube with a metal coupling tube inside, and it's literally designed just to allow you to couple 2 pens together. So you put bullet connector on there, bullet connector on there, and then you connect the 2 leftover connectors into the front of the machine. Like that. And then you have 2 pens linked up to the same thing. Having bought this and having experimented with it a little bit, to be perfectly honest, I don't like it. There are some machines which you can get which have literally a splitter. So a little box about the size of a cigarette lighter, a little bit bigger than a cigarette lighter, and basically it would be a little box that you stuck 2 pens in, and then it has a little rocker switch, a bit like this switch. But instead of turning the pens on and off, it switches the current between the 2 pens. I prefer that system. The problem with the coupler system is you have that current, whatever current you set it to, running through both pens at once, which means that you've got 2 hot-tipped pens. Now it's very good for switching quickly between pens. You can jump backwards and forwards very quickly between using 2 different tips. But from my own experience, you don't really jump backwards and forwards between using 2 different tips that often, and you don't need to do it that quickly. So it just means that you've got 2 hot points, 2 live pens at the same time, and that's something I personally don't like. Some people may love that, but I would prefer to have a rocker switch style thing. So for me that's a bit of a negative point. But it's so easy just to off, pull it out, put another pen in, on, that it is worth getting 2 pens. That way you can set up 2 different nibs at the beginning and literally just switch between them by just plugging them in and out. And because it warms up so quickly, it warms up within a few seconds. It's not like a solid point machine where you have to wait 4 minutes for it to get to temperature. This thing will be hot and ready to burn within about 4 seconds, so it's not a big deal. And it will also cool down very quickly, especially if you blow on the wire tip gently, if you provide a little bit of air current to help cool it down. Now, as you can see, these connectors have flathead screws, and of course the assumption is you'll have a flathead screwdriver somewhere, so they don't provide you with one. It would be nice to have the option to buy just a little tiny, perhaps one like this that's electric protected, a little tiny electric protected screwdriver that goes in with your kit. Perhaps maybe one in a little holder on the side would be very nice, but they don't provide that option. However, all you need to do is get any old flathead screwdriver that is of the right sort of size, and it works fine. I use an electric protected one just because it was actually the first one I picked up out of my toolkit, and I've just left it with my pyrography equipment. So that's the pen and the machine from a physical standpoint, as well as a couple of extras you can buy, which are the connectors and the coupler. The other thing you can buy is you can buy wire, and you can buy it from anywhere that sells nickel chrome wire. There's a couple of different companies. Once again, I bought mine directly from the Peter Childs company because although I found a cheap company where the wire was about 10 to 12p cheaper per roll, or in the case of the thick wire I think it was 30p cheaper per roll, the postage made it not worth it. So from Peter Childs you can get these for £6 each, or £5 each, sorry, for £5 each, or for £18 for a pack of 4 different sizes. And these are 28 gram coils. Now, as I said, you can get these for about £4 from certain other scientific wire websites and wire supply websites and modelling websites as well. You can get them a little bit cheaper, but if you're already buying from a website, you have to take into account postage, and a lot of these companies will charge you 2 to 3 to 4, I mean, one company was looking at charging £6 for postage, which was a bit silly. So what you can buy is you can buy one reel, and he sells between 23 and 26 as standard, but he can get other sizes of wire as well. You can get one reel, or you can buy a pack of 4. I bought a pack of 4, and to be perfectly honest, I think I made a bit of a foolish choice, because this is a 25-gram wire. This thing here is about a gram and a half, and will do almost 100 points, in my personal opinion. It might do as few as 40 if you're using a lot of wire per point. This is 28 grams. This is going to do thousands of points. Now, it is under slight tension, so when you'll find that the point comes stuck under the sticker. When you first take it out, it'll whiz and slightly unroll itself, but that's to be expected with machine packed wire. You'll also find that with this manufactured machine packed wire, the first time you put it in your pyrography machine and turn it on, you'll get a little bit of smoke. That is the machine oil that they use to lubricate the machines as they make the wire. Do not breathe that smoke, it is not healthy. First time you do it, you should make sure you've got a lot more ventilation. So a couple of other things that you can get and that are very useful. You can buy these from Peter Child's own website, but personally, I would personally buy these from a hobby shop or from a modelling shop, because you can get them far cheaper. And those are wire snips for cutting your wire down to make wire points, pliers in a couple of different sizes, and you can actually buy a pack of 5 of these, which will include these, some bent tip ones, which I've got here, and another kind that I've lost, which will be face snip ones. So you can get a 5-pack of these for usually around 10 quid if you're buying cheaper versions. You don't need expensive ones as long as they have decent wire snips. For instance, I've got a pair of wire snips here. These ones cost about £1, a little pair of modelling wire snips. These are suitable for people who want to cut plastic tines when they're doing modelling, or people who want to snip plastic for doing modelling. These aren't suitable for cutting wire. I don't know if you can see, but I actually experimented with cutting wire with this, and you can actually see that it's actually dented the blade. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a few small nicks in the blade where cutting through wire has actually damaged these. So these aren't really suitable for cutting wire. Other things you need: wood to burn on, sanding paper, things like that. As it comes to the actual burn for this, it depends on the wood you've got. The temperature is very stable, I will say that. If you push it deep into a piece of wood, of course it's going to lose a lot of its heat, but it will very quickly heat back up. It's got a nice stable temperature. There's no real big variation. Once you've set it to a point, it will stay at that point. You can control it by changing the amount of electricity running through it by turning the control knob. You can also change it by blowing on the tip and then doing pyrography if you want to create a kind of a cold to hot effect, which is very good. It's comfortable to use. I've had no problems using it. I have a problem with my hand where I will get cramp in my hand, or will get slight pain in the tendons of my hand after a while. I know exactly what causes it, it's just a problem I have. However, this causes it far less than the larger crafter style pens. The larger crafter style pens are designed so that you can grip them tighter and grip them harder, and you can put more effort into things if you're cutting hot cutting plastic, things like that. Whereas this is more an artist style pen. It's very narrow, it's very straight. It gives you a lot of fine control when you're close to a piece of work. Unlike a single temperature machine, the distance between the holding tip and the tip of the wire is very, very short, which gives you more control if you're doing artistic things. So it's better than a solid point machine for artistic style pieces. And of course, unlike a solid point machine, this doesn't get hot, so you can actually use it for longer. When it comes to the wire points, other things you need is you need somewhere to put your hot wire points, because even though they do cool down quickly, if you're changing on the fly, if you're changing things that you've done on the fly, it's nice to have a little dish to put the hot wire points in. As I said, screwdriver, pliers, a little brass brush, a little brass feathered brush, just to clean off the tips, clean off carbon build-up, things like that, is very nice and useful. They don't sell those, but would be nice if they did. If you could get everything in one place. What else? What else can we talk about? yes, that's something I wanted to talk about. When you're buying a wire tip machine, have a look at the connectors on the end. Always have a look at the connectors on the end, because there are a lot of wire tip machines that now use proprietary connectors. So rather than having these little nut and bolt and contact point connectors, they will have little plug holes. And the issue with that is, you can even though it's a wire point machine in that the point is made of wire and electricity flows through the point and the point heats up via resistance, which is kind of the definition of a wire point machine, wire that heats up through resistance. Because it's got a proprietary connector, you can only ever use bought points that you have bought from them. Advantage with the Peter Childs machine, and with several other machines that I've seen as well, is that this isn't basically what's called an open source connector. Essentially, it's a nut and bolt and a connection point to the machine, contact point. And the advantage of that is you can use anything. You can make your own points at home. You don't have to buy the points from Peter Childs. If you want to buy the points from Peter Childs or from any other company that does plain wire points, go for it. If you want to make them at home, they provide you with the wire to do it in the starter kit to have a little play. You can buy additional wire from them or anybody else to try later. And it's not particularly difficult. You can make your own wire points and you can just slot them in, screw the screws or screw the bolts tight and turn it on, and you've got a good working wire point machine, which is a great advantage of these open source or open use contacts on the end. So always have a look at that if you're buying a wire point machine. Make sure it's not a proprietary connector on the end here. I mean, you'll always have some form of proprietary or some form of different connector on this end of the pen. Peter Childs uses bullet connectors, other ones use D-pin connectors, some use jacks. I've seen one that uses a multi-prong plug, a little teeny tiny multi-prong plug. But on this end, you want a nice open source connector so that you can use any wire tip that you want to make. And you also get, with this, you also get a instruction manual that gives you some advice on making tips, as well as using different tips and different kinds of wood and things, which is very nice. Always make sure you use the recommended wire. For this machine, it's nickel chrome, between 27 and 22 gauge, standard wire gauge, not American. Always use recommended wire, because if you put the wrong kind of wire in, either you can melt it and slag it, and in which case basically what happens is if you put in the wrong kind of wire, you can melt it to the point where it will literally drip or bend or wrap, and you can actually sort of almost semi-weld it to the machine if it's not high temperature enough. You can also have issues where wire that's got little bits of bubbles of air from the manufacturing process can spit and fizz. You can also have issues where wire that has too little resistance and too much conductivity can actually short out the pen, which leads to you having to replace the pen if too much electricity passes through. So always be careful, always use the recommended wire in the recommended thicknesses. There's a couple of videos on my channel for making different style wire points, which you can go and have a look at. If you want to have a look at this machine in action, a lot of my more recent project videos use this machine. So pretty much everything after the Giraffe Bob video uses this to some degree. So you can go and have a look at it. On the disadvantage side, you can't pattern with it because you haven't got a patterning tip. But there are other ways to pattern other than laser printed patterns. You can't transfer laser printed patterns with this, but you can just use a carbon paper or chalk and rubbing, or just draw straight onto the wood to get a pattern. That's fine. Comfort wise, work wise, it's all very good. So what I'll do is I'll move on to the wrap up now. So let's talk wrap up. Decent sized machine, great handle, nice controls with a good bit of sensory feedback. Personally don't like the connector on the top. Would prefer to have a little stand separate to this, but that's fine. Good length of cable, both on the base unit and on the pen. A thin, comfortable to hold pen with good tines and an open source connectors on the end that allow you to use any wire point, including homemade ones. Most of their kits come with a bit of wire for you to practice making tips with and for you to make tips with, which is very nice. It's got a very good temperature variance. It's a nice, sturdy, strong looking machine, and is a nice, sturdy feeling machine. The pen itself doesn't get hot. The tip gets hot within a couple of seconds and cools down within a couple of seconds, so it's very nice to use when you're using something quickly. Cost wise, it's not the cheapest machine in existence, but personally I think it's worth it. The starter kit will cost you £100 for the UK version, £110 for the American version. Additional pens, £30 either way, give or take 70 pence or so. You can buy extra connect points or extra bolts and screws for the ends of your pen. You can buy couplers to join pens together. Personally not my thing, don't really like it. That's personal choice. Screwdriver is necessary but doesn't come with the kit. It's necessary for changing the points. Preferentially a brass brush for cleaning off carbon debris. Once again, doesn't come with the machine but is easily accessible from any old model shop. Little modelling pliers for making wire tips. You can store your wire tips however you want. I store mine in folded paper storage containers, which are all marked so that I know what's in where. Wire for this machine is nickel chrome between 22 and 27 standard wire gauge. Fuses between a 3 and a 1 amp, so either 3 amp or a 1 amp fuse. Comes with a 3 amp fuse in the plug. It's a decent size, 4x4 by 7 inches including the handle. Handle's a nice little addition. Don't think there's anything else to say, guys. It burns well. The actual quality of the burn really depends on a mixture of the wire point. So if you get a good quality wire point, if you've either made a good wire point or you've bought a good wire point, then it'll be very nice and controlled. Temperature control is very good. On-off switch, lots of nice feedback, lights up when it's turned on. Bullet connectors are a little stiff, but they're nice and strong and tight bullet connectors. It's got a good weight to it. And all in all, guys, it's a nice little machine. So guys, thanks for watching us here on Thelearningdroid. If you want to see this machine in action, go and check out some of my projects on the wood burning projects playlist. The more modern projects, pretty much everything after Giraffe and Bob, will use this machine for the most part. I'll link a couple in the description as well, so you can have a couple of quick looks. And I hope, guys, you enjoyed the video. See you again next time.